am absolutely obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons. My entire life, I've basically been playing the game and being a dungeon master for the game as well. I've also watched tons and tons and tons of content. How to make terrain, how to like do voices, stuff like that. And one of the big things with Dungeons and Dragons that I love is the massive amounts of creativity that you can really have, I guess you could say. And one of the best people for Dungeons and Dragons, obviously there's a lot of them, but is Matt Mercer. There's a entire thing around Matt Mercer where they call it the Matt Mercer effect, where basically people will copy and paste his games and try to be exactly like him. But the thing that's really hard about that for a lot of people in particular is Matt Mercer is a professional voice actor full time. If you don't know, he plays Trafalgar Law in One Piece. He plays McCree in Overwatch, and he plays a ton more characters. But those are like probably the two most outstanding. That you're gonna be like, oh, that's Matt Mercer right there. And he obviously plays D&D, and he plays with a lot of other people that are voice actors as well. Then they've basically created this channel that is absolutely amazing in every single way when it comes to representing what D&D is and basically just putting on a great story for the audience to experience. But the issue with this as well comes obviously a lot of people think that that's how D&D is, when in reality if you go and you play a normal game of D&D, it's just not going to be anywhere near that. Not saying it can't be, but you gotta kind of realize they're essentially professionals at role playing. When you're playing other characters, when it comes to voice acting, you're changing your voice all the time. You're kind of professional at role playing, and they really lean into this to make it this massive cinematic scene that you can enjoy. I mean, like when Matt describes things or how the group is, at least for me personally, I can imagine what it would be like kind of almost watching it through a television. And if you don't know, with these campaigns, they became so popular that they have become a show on Amazon Prime. First was their first campaign, which is the Vox Machina. I'm not a huge fan of Vox Machina. I feel like Vox Machina is the first one. Like it's really good, but I think it's good in a way where like this is default D&D, right? And I think that's why Vox Machina is good, because it's a very default version of D&D. It really is just some friends playing, and it's really hard when you are playing your own game or maybe enjoying it yourself to be like, okay, yeah, let me sit down and watch a base version of D&D. But their second campaign, which was Critical Role Season 2, aka The Mighty Nein, was absolutely insane. Every single character had a crazy story that took, 100 to 200 real life days to complete. Every single character had a unique voice. Matt had unique voices for all of them. Like, it was a very cinematic world as a overall, and it's one of the things that, like, honestly probably revived D&D. Not saying that D&D was ever going downhill, but it just stagnated for years. It was to the point where it's like the only people that were playing D&D was either people who used to play D&D or people that those people would introduce to Dungeons and Dragons. But they weren't really getting a lot of new players because honestly a lot of the D&D content out was just mid. It really was. Like there was like some good campaigns going on here and there, but when it came down to it, there's like nothing that was like Matt Mercer's campaign. And because of this, when it first released, it got some backlash here and there, but after a while, everybody ended up kind of loving the campaign, and it made a lot of inspiration for other YouTube channels to focus more on the cinematics and the funny moments and the friend aspects instead of it just being like a base D&D game. Because there's too many times, especially if you're a dungeon master, you know this, where you're playing a base D&D game or you're hosting a base D&D game, and there's just a lot of like in between lacking, right? Like I mean, like dead spots, spots where like nobody's doing anything, spots where nobody's saying anything, and I think that's just the difference between this and how D&D used to be played on YouTube. Because YouTube used to be that way, right? Where it was just the base game. There's a lot of dead spots, a lot of like nothingness. But how Matt Mercer does it, and how a lot of YouTube channels do it now, especially like Legends of Evantrius, which is another great channel, they produce the game in a way where it feels like you're reading a book, basically, or you're watching a movie. And I absolutely love that these are actually getting animated. I think that's great. I think that, are we going to get the full campaign animated of these series? No, probably never. Just because it's a lot of money. It really is. I love the Mighty Nine, but like there was so much that happened in that campaign, and like the only way I could imagine this working is if they made it 5, 6, 7 seasons, whatever it is, because anything below that, I couldn't fathom how they would fit everything in unless they just tried to cram as much into an episode as possible, which is 100% possible. And also, from my understanding, the voice actors in the show are like the people that played the campaign, obviously. And I think that's a W because now it's giving them a voice acting job, but it's also, they probably get some sort of payment for everything that's like a critical role, or like if they're in an episode or whatever it is, if I had to assume. And this also introduced a lot of people to like Laura Bailey, which is one of the best voice actors to ever live. Like I'll stand by that. Laura Bailey is one of the best voice actors to ever live. So, needless to say, I am very, very hyped for a Mighty Nine series to come out instead of the Vox Machina one. Because the Vox Machina one, like I said, it's good, but it feels like a default D&D game. Where the Mighty Nine is like cinematic. Like it's actual peak cinema. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about. Who's your favorite Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel right now? If you even have one. If you don't have one, I recommend Critical Role, and if you don't like Critical Role, try Legends of Evantrius. They're very similar in like the way that they produce, but they're very, very different in like their group style. Because Legends of Evantrius is mainly giggles and laughs most of the time, and when you watch like Critical Role, it's still laughs and stuff, but it's more like a little bit of adult humor, and it's kind of like watching the Adult Swim of Cartoon Network, essentially, where Legends of Adventures feels like Cartoon Network. Like there's adult humor, but there's so much other humor here and there too, where like it's just constant funniness almost. Where like Mighty Nine, or Critical Role feels like Adult Swim. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.